Why do Vietnamese celebrate death anniversaries instead of birthdays? Imagine being invited to a family gathering in Vietnam. The table is filled with food. Relatives arrive one after another. Incense slowly rises from a small altar. At first, you might think it's someone's birthday. But then you realize, the person everyone is gathering for passed away many years ago. To many Westerners, this feels surprising. Why would a family reunite every year to remember the exact day someone died? Wouldn't birthdays be more important in Vietnam? The answer reveals something far deeper than a calendar. It reveals how Vietnamese people understand family, memory, and the idea that love does not end with death. A celebration without the person. For many first-time visitors, a Vietnamese death anniversary can be confusing. There are flowers. There is food. Children laugh. Relatives chat happily. Nothing feels like the sad funeral they expected. That is because a death anniversary is not about mourning. It is about remembering. The Vietnamese call it G. Instead of focusing on the sadness of losing someone, the family celebrates the life that person lived. The person may no longer be physically present. But in the hearts of the family, they are still part of every gathering. Why is the death anniversary more important than a birthday? In many Western cultures, birthdays celebrate the beginning of life. Each year marks another step forward. But in Vietnam, many families believe that a person's influence does not end when they die. In fact, it continues through the generations. That is why the death anniversary often carries deeper meaning than a birthday. A birthday belongs to one individual. A death anniversary brings the entire family together. It is a moment when children return home. Brothers and sisters meet again. Grandchildren hear stories about relatives they may have never met. In this way, every death anniversary becomes more than a ritual. It becomes a bridge between generations. For many Vietnamese families, forgetting someone's death anniversary would mean forgetting a part of the family's own story. So every year, they gather. Not because they are trapped in the past, but because they believe remembrance is one of the greatest forms of respect. The origins of the tradition. Where did this tradition come from? Its roots stretch back hundreds of years. Vietnam was built on an agricultural civilization. Families often lived together on the same land for generations. Life depended on cooperation. Parents, children, and grandparents all worked together. As these communities grew, remembering one's ancestors became more than a spiritual belief. It became a way of preserving family identity. Later, the influence of Confucian philosophy strengthened this idea. Respecting parents and honoring ancestors became one of the highest moral values. At the same time, Vietnamese folk beliefs held that although the body dies, the bond between family members does not simply disappear. This is why many families prepare a meal on the death anniversary. Not because they believe the ancestors physically return to eat the food, but because sharing a meal is a timeless symbol of gratitude, remembrance, and connection. Across Vietnam, every family may celebrate a little differently. Some ceremonies are simple. Others are large family reunions. But the message remains the same. No matter how much time has passed, those who came before us are never forgotten. Do ancestors really come back? This is perhaps the question that surprises foreign visitors the most. Do Vietnamese people truly believe that their ancestors return home on the day of the death anniversary? The answer is not as simple as yes or no. For many families, it is a matter of faith. They believe that, on this special day, the spirits of their ancestors are invited to return not as physical beings, but as honored members of the family. The incense, the food, the flowers, and the quiet prayers are all symbols of that invitation. For others, especially younger generations, the ceremony is less about the supernatural and more about remembrance. Whether they believe in spirits or not, they still gather because the ritual reminds them of where they came from. It is a chance to pause, to remember the sacrifices of parents and grandparents, and to pass those stories on to the next generation. In other words, the death anniversary is not only about those who have passed away. It is also about those who are still living. It reminds every family member that they are part of a much longer story, one that began long before they were born and will continue long after they are gone. More than a ritual, a family reunion. If you ask a Vietnamese person what they remember most about a death anniversary, many won't mention the incense or the prayers. They'll talk about the people. For many families, this is one of the rare occasions when everyone comes home. Children who work in big cities return to their hometown. Relatives who haven't seen each other for months or even years sit around the same table again. They cook together, eat together, laugh together, and share stories about parents, grandparents, and ancestors. In a fast-moving world where families often live far apart, the death anniversary becomes something surprisingly modern. It creates a reason to reconnect. A reason to slow down. A reason to remember that family is not only about the people sitting beside you today, but also about those whose lives made yours possible. Perhaps that is why, after the incense has faded and the meal is over, what remains is not sadness. It is gratitude. A tradition that is changing. Like many traditions, the Vietnamese death anniversary is changing with time. Today's Vietnam is very different from the past. Many young people leave their hometowns to study or work in big cities. Some even live overseas. Returning home on the exact death anniversary is no longer always possible. As a result, some families choose to gather on the nearest weekend instead. Others hold a smaller ceremony with only close relatives. In large cities, where apartments have limited space, ancestor altars are often simpler than those found in traditional homes. Yet despite these changes, the heart of the tradition remains the same. Whether the ceremony is grand or modest, whether it takes place in a village or a city, its purpose has never really changed. It is a moment to remember. A moment to give thanks. And a reminder that family is a connection that continues across generations. More than remembering the dead. To an outsider, a Vietnamese death anniversary may seem to be about death. But for those who grew up with this tradition, it is really about life. It teaches children to know the names of their grandparents and great-grandparents. It reminds each generation that they did not build their lives alone. Every opportunity they have today, every home they live in, every family tradition they inherit, exists because someone before them made sacrifices. That is why Vietnamese families do not gather simply to mourn. They gather to express gratitude. And gratitude, in Vietnamese culture, is one of the strongest ways to keep love alive. Perhaps this is why the atmosphere is often filled with conversation, laughter, and shared memories. Because remembering someone is not about holding on to sadness. It is about making sure they are never forgotten. In many parts of the world, people celebrate the day a life begins. In Vietnam, families also choose to honor the day a life leaves this world. Not because they value death more than life, but because they believe that love, gratitude, and family do not end with death. A death anniversary is not about looking backward. It is about remembering the people who shaped the present. Perhaps that is why, year after year, families continue to gather around the same table, light the same incense, prepare the same familiar dishes, and tell the same stories once again. Because as long as someone is remembered, they are never truly gone. And maybe, that is one of the most beautiful traditions in Vietnam. If this story helped you understand Vietnam a little better, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Why Vietnamese. Every tradition has a story, and every story reveals a little more about the heart of Vietnam. See you in the next episode.